Happy Friday. Happy Fridays with Fidelman. I'm Cheryl Fidelman, life coach, trauma healer, and writer. And this is the second Friday of January 10th, 2020. And today's topic on Fridays with Fidelman is procrastination and the codependent creator. Procrastination and the codependent creator. I want to start with just one thank you, shout out to people who give me comments and feedback on my videos. I really, really appreciate it. I love knowing how the videos are landing and what ideas the videos are sparking for you, and what pulled you into the videos, the insights that you enjoyed, and the ideas that you enjoyed. And also, I've gotten some reflection about the sound quality of my videos. And so thank you for letting me know. And I have ordered an external microphone. So as soon as it arrives, I'll be plugging it in, and the sound quality will be increased. So thanks again for letting me know, how the sound is landing for you all out there in your worlds. Procrastination and the codependent creator. And when I say creator, I'm not just talking about artists, people who identify as artists. We are creating constantly, and we're creating from a particular context. Everything that we say and everything that we don't say and everything that we do and everything that we don't do is creating something. It's like our life, and not just our individual life, but the entire web of creation, and I'll just distill it back down to one life. It's like you are the link right now, right this moment, is like the link on a chain. The link on a chain of a series of events of your life that go from when you were born, and of course the series of events precedes you dramatically, but we'll start with you in your life, right? So this is an event and a link on a chain that started before now, it's happening now, and it's moving forward. So it's like we're part of a ripple effect that's already happening, and simultaneously we're creating the ripple effect moving forward. I imagine that physics has a name for what I just said. I'm going to look it up because I have more to say about that, but I think if I had more distinction around it, I'd be able to speak to it even more. And this is where procrastination is an illusion. Procrastination tells us that we actually have plenty of time. Because if we were viscerally aware that life is now, and viscerally aware that we actually don't know how much time we have, then procrastination wouldn't be an issue. I think procrastination goes along with death denial. They sort of go hand in hand. I think procrastination also goes hand in hand with depression. But I'm not going to cover depression right now. What I'm going to cover is when we are creating, right, and we have vigor in what we're creating, we have focus, we have momentum, we have clarity as to what it is we're creating, or at least we have some idea of what we're creating, then I'm going to say that our traumatic identity is not at play. And when I say traumatic identity, this is a distinction of my work. Traumatic identity, also known as your default identity, which is the part of your psychology that is a product of your trauma that's running the show. And for each and every one of us, our traumatic identity is different. For some people, their traumatic identity that's running the show is a very, very angry, sort of rageful voice, a similar voice from potentially one of their overpowering or abusive parents or guardians. For some people, it's a lack of worth and value, which is my traumatic identity, is like major just lack of worth, almost like every other person that's alive came with a value that I didn't actually come with. That is my traumatic part, a big part of my traumatic identity. And a lot of time went by in my life with my traumatic identity running and leading the show, which meant that I didn't get a whole lot done because I was waiting to be called upon to come to get into motion to do something. And because when I was called upon, then it honored my existence. It had me feel valued and validated to actually step into action. Because on my own, I couldn't find the value or validation in my own existence. Once my traumatic identity was no longer in the driver's seat, then value and validation of my own existence wasn't necessary for me to move into action. Now, when our traumatic identity is healed, noticed, distinguished, put in the passenger seat, then one can create inside of a bond with oneself, a union with oneself, which is, how we look at a yogic practice, right? Yoga is union, body, mind, soul. And I would go so far as to say that creation is also a union with oneself, body, mind, soul. And also a union with the extent to which we don't own time. Procrastination convinces us, I think, there's one way to look at it is that it convinces us that we actually own time. We own time, and or time owes us something. And part of procrastination, I don't just mean procrastination in that like you're sitting on the couch for days and you're not doing anything. There's so many different ways to procrastinate. You're in a marriage for 20 years and you're not happy and it's not working. And you're constantly in a cycle of codependence and feeling lack and feeling disconnected and not feeling the visceral level of safety that is your birthright. Okay? And so what you're doing is you're actually procrastinating, creating the context where you have the experience of connection, joy, partnership, and the transformation, evolution that can happen inside of a healthy union, right? So you're still stuck trying to prove and gain that which you were trying to prove and gain as a kid. You're only stuck in trying to prove something or gain something. You don't ever have the experience of actually landing in validation and safety. You only have the experience of consistently longing for it. So another product of procrastination is consistently wanting that which you're not going to get in a particular situation. Like you're still wanting the situation to change so you can get that thing that you want. Instead of having that thing that you want actually coming from and being birthed from your union with yourself. I want to use pregnancy as an example. When one is pregnant, there's a creation that's starting. We become viscerally aware of creation. Okay? There's conception, a woman is pregnant, creation is happening. And there's a time frame to that creation. And so one will immediately start living as if the future is giving them their experience of the present moment, which is always happening. We're just not always consciously aware that the future that we're living into, what we're planning, what we think is going to happen, what we're anticipating, what we're preparing for, is giving us the experience in the current moment. And we often think, well, the past is giving us the experience of the current moment because we're standing on top of the past and we're full of, fears and bruises and traumas from the past. Yes, and what has happened in our past is having us formulate what we think is going to happen in the future. So it's this concept or theory that the future that we think is going to happen is actually giving us our experience in the current moment. And I think pregnancy is a great example of creating, and being viscerally aware of a time frame. Okay? In 9.5 months, in 10 months, this baby's coming out. What are we doing to prepare in the time frame? Not only what are we doing to prepare in the time frame, what is happening effortlessly? What's happening effortlessly is that the baby is growing. The woman's body is changing. There's a hormonal change. There's an adaptation to, for the woman, there's an adaptation to living in a different new body. The biological, you're formulating you're unconsciously and consciously formulating your maternal instinct. There's so much happening with or without your effort when you're pregnant. And that is an obvious example of what is happening all the time. We are always in a gestation period. What you are doing or not doing is creating something. And if you are more in relation to your traumatic identity, I would call that codependent creating. So you're creating from a place of, I'm not going to do this thing that I really want to do. I'm not going to do this thing that I'm passionate about because I'm more focused on this job that I don't like, or I'm more focused on, or actually the way I want to say it is, if you're focused on what your mind and your body are telling you that you can't do, then you are creating whatever it is that's happening in your life in a codependent manner, because you are a slave to your limitations. You're a slave to the limitations of your unhealed trauma. Because without the trauma, and for a lot of people, it's so subtle, right? It's like, I'm lost, I don't know what to do. Potentially you have an addiction to being lost and actually not feeling landed in feeling found. And a lot of that goes back to, lack of validation as a child, and also not knowing what it feels like in your body to actually fully surrender to safety. So then it becomes hard to fully know what it is you should actually fully surrender and give yourself to. What is the healthiest thing for me to surrender to and give my heart and my soul, my blood, sweat, and tears to? A lot of people have altruistic desires. There's communities in the world that they want to help. They know they have some talent or gift that will serve and provide. And they circumvent their own soul's mission and voice because there's something that tells them, whoever it is that you think you are, you're not that. So as a product of not being noticed and validated as a kid, you can't notice and validate yourself. You can't notice and validate your own magic and your own power. And that, as long as you're holding back your gifts, your passions, and maybe you don't know what your specific gifts and passions are, but like you love dogs and you want to go volunteer at a, no-kill shelter or something. people have time to do these things and they don't do them, or they can carve out the time if they were viscerally aware that they did not know how much time they had left to do it. Also, sometimes there's just nothing at stake. You can live a mediocre version of your life and like nothing is at stake. You're not going to lose your apartment. You're not going to lose your car. You're making a decent amount of money. So I'll just like sort of live with a certain level of unfulfillment. I'm kind of used to it. Nothing's going to happen. I'll be fine. I'm not going to not eat just because I feel a little unfulfilled. So that's actually, where I would say that procrastination and codependent creating is almost like it's tough because it's a little bit of a phantom. It's hard to even notice because it just becomes the way that it is. Like if there's anything in your life that you're, what's the word? I had to press pause because I couldn't think of the word I wanted to say. If there's anything in your life that you're just tolerating, and you're used to tolerating it, how much more time do you think that you have to tolerate that thing? The answer to that is we don't know, right? So we don't have a whole lot of time to sit and like be mean to ourselves and yell at ourselves and like punish ourselves. We don't have a whole lot of time to live a smaller version of the life that we think we can live. We don't have a whole lot of time to just continually long for something that we can actually go and get if once we knew that it was really up to us. And one of those things is inner peace. I know I've spoken about inner peace many, many times, but when your brain is not wired for inner peace, which a lot of our brains are just not like innately wired for inner peace, it was taken from us from a traumatic event or a series of traumatic events. What is running the show is a small to extreme version of mental noise that actually has nothing to do with you. It's your traumatic identity. It has nothing to do with you. We think it's us. We start to identify it as us. I identified for so long as the one who was just intrinsically less valuable than anything and anyone that was ever alive. It was just the way it was for me. And that identity that I clung onto for so long wasn't even me. And it had nothing to do with me. And I was in relationship with that. I was in a codependent relationship with my traumatic identity, and everything that I created was a product of my relationship of my codependent relationship with my traumatic identity. With my clients, I give them homework assignments, and oftentimes I give them writing assignments. Whether or not there's someone that identifies as like a writer or not, I think writing is just a really, really great exercise, and we all have something to say, and we all have stories to tell. And some of them are just free form brainstorming journal entries. What is so beautiful about my experience, and I'm getting moved now, because when people read me their writing, like they read me their homework assignments, I get an even deeper layer than I'll ever get in speaking. And no matter how deep we go verbally and energetically in the sessions, there's another frequency of communication that happens when people write. And so one of my clients, thank you for giving me permission. I got permission to share this quote. Shout out to my client CC out there. Thank you for permitting me to share this quote. And this quote from one of this client's recent homework assignments it floored me. And it just, in one sentence, from my point of view, says almost everything about my work and everything about the what I'm trying to point to as the code in my thoughts about the codependent creator. So the quote is, "My default is my home. I've fallen in love with my captors. My default is my home, and I have fallen in love with my captors." Now, what this client means by default is they're referring to their default psychology, which also known as your traumatic identity, and these are the two things that we discover inside of my work: your default psychology and your traumatic identity. So when this client says my default is my home and I've fallen in love with my captors, it's like they're a slave to what their default psychology is telling them. And it's like they're a victim to what their default and their traumatic identity is telling them. And there's a love affair there, right? It's like a dysfunctional love affair with the noise in our brain. And there's a loyalty to it. And the more we are loyal to the noise in our brain, the more time is just going to go by. And our use of that time will be mediocre at best. To my client, I hope I did justice in interpreting your quote. And I think the best thing that we can do is to simply be aware of what we're creating. If we're creating suffering, be aware of it. If we're creating newness and freshness and connection, be aware of it. Be aware moment to moment what it is that you are the source of creating. And to just, I think I'm going to end on this thought, to circle back around to the example I used of pregnancy. You know, that, I'm going to say, is not an act of codependent creation, because that baby is going to go through its gestation period. It's going to do its best to create itself regardless of what you're doing, regardless of what the mother's doing, regardless of what the father or partner, if there is one, is doing. It is pushing through everything it could possibly push through. It's receiving all the nutrients it possibly can. And it's saying, no matter what you guys are doing out there beyond this womb, I am pushing through and I am growing and I'm creating myself to be. So and it's like whatever noise is going on in my holding environment, I'm still pushing through. And that precedes the point that I made last week when I talked about the amount of transformation that that happens between birth and 10 years old is just exponential, and the amount of transformation that happens between the age of 10 and 20 is also exponential. And going back to being a fetus before birth, the amount of transformation that happens needlessly. I mean, that's not completely true. I mean, the fetus has needs, but it is still moving with a force and growth and focus on becoming a baby and coming out. And that kind of force and determination that is innate. Our life force is stolen by our loyalty to our mental noise and our traumatic identity. So I just am going to say, be a thirst for stealing it back. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for showing up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please leave comments. Let me know what ideas are striking you. Any thoughts, any experiences that you'd like to share with me. I think this phrase is really appropriate. I say it often, but it's particularly appropriate for this video. Life is now. Life is now. You're awesome. Happy healing. Bye-bye. One more thought about, to tag on to that concept that the future is giving us who we are and in the present. The future is giving us our experience of life in the present moment. Just to throw in, what are the delusions that you have put in your future that are giving you your experience of life in the current moment? Just putting out that thought just to let it simmer. Thanks again, guys. Thanks for playing with me. Thanks for listening. Have an awesome weekend. Life is now.